everyone, whoever is doing whatever they are. It is all about a process and consistency. There is no other shortcut to success or whatever you are doing. Can Ahmad, Raj, can you guys confirm, Umar, that you're able to see us on LinkedIn as well? LinkedIn and YouTube. And then we will officially start the session.
Let me check the YouTube version.
Yeah, YouTube, and someone check LinkedIn and just confirm on the chat. Let me just open, because if I open LinkedIn here, it's going to be voice, extra voice that is going to come.
Yeah, I can see the YouTube version. It's working.
Okay. I think, yeah, guys, please be on mute if possible. Yeah. So I think we should start the session because people are there on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. So good afternoon, good evening, whichever time zone you are. Before I introduce the guest speaker and today's topic, I crossed it in within 6. A little bit ground rules. So I'm muting the mics and I will ask Dennis to unmute later on, but I'm muting the mics, everyone. And this is a part of the ongoing challenge that we are having right now, wherein this is the third day of the challenge that is going on. And this is a special workshop, event, or whatever you say, where we are trying to uh, do some knowledge sharing that will also help all of you in the challenge that is there. So today's topic is about the GitHub. And Dennis, initially in the day first, he was asking that why don't you do things on GitHub? And as I told, many people don't use GitHub. So I had to educate them in the day 3 to make GitHub. I did a session on to do that. Many of you have done that. And please put on the chat just to know whether this particular you all are there on GitHub or not on GitHub. If that will be easy for uh, Dennis and me to also give you guys some the level of our talk. So just put on the chat if you have done GitHub or not. And now I more about this specific topic today. Um, I have talked about GitHub and we are just discussing before the call, me and Dennis. Today, Dennis is going to give his version of GitHub, his experience of GitHub. He just shared that he has 199 repo. He's going to touch 200 soon, or maybe he already has 200. And he's going to share about him and he's going to do some demo of some of the projects that he has done. And then as a ground rule, we are on YouTube, we are on LinkedIn streaming as well. I'll be trying to take some questions. Please put on the chat your questions. Raise your hands if you want to ask anything. And Dennis here, Dennis Daniels has been a part of our community for a long time. He's a managing partner of OneLink Services, and he has a lot of experience in the technology space. It is spanning around 3 decades. He can give a quick intro more about himself, and the stage is over to him. And thanks a lot, Dennis, for coming here and sharing your knowledge and to all the participants about GitHub and your experience. And he was just mentioning that in the last 6 months, he has built 70 projects. So you can take motivation for him that in a day, you can build an end-to-end project and deploy it. And so 8 days that you have is a big time for even beginners to start doing something. So over to you, Dennis, and thanks again for coming and sharing your experience with all of us.
Thank you, Mohammed. It's true. The GitHub has been my go-to storage for my projects for many years. And it has been the go-to resource for developers, and I would say for business owners as well, people who want to make sure that the developer that they're hiring actually can write code. I know in some companies, when they're evaluating whether or not to hire a developer, they will look at their GitHub repo to find out whether or not that developer can actually write code. And with the development and the advances of large language models in general in the last 6 months, year or so, it's made it much easier for me as a business owner to come up to identify problems in my business space and then use the large language models like initially it would have been GPT 2.0, GPT 3. Those were very basic large language models. You might get 50 lines of code that would work. Now with GPT 4.0, Sonnet 3.5, DeepSeek 3, you're able to generate, as a business owner, you're able to generate 400 to 500 lines of working code with a default license. Now, how does that apply to GitHub? It means that when you have an application that works, you can share it with another developer and say, hey, I need you to extend this out or do more work that I can't do because I'm a business owner and I have other things to do, like take care of my business. So you as a business owner can generate a proof of concept and hand it over to GitHub and hand that over to another developer who can then begin working on it in a bigger fashion. Now, that's only one of many use cases that you would consider as a business owner when using GitHub. GitHub is a great repository for storing your code. And I gotta tell you, how many times I wish I had saved a project that I had been working on. I wish I had saved it to GitHub to have it as a reference when I needed it again in the future. There are literally, and I'm not joking, there are literally thousands of lines of code that have been lost to me because they're on computers that I don't have access to anymore. I don't have access to the code that I wrote. So GitHub as a place to save your code and share your code is a great choice. There are other choices. You have GitLab, you have Replit, you have basic text. All of those might work, but GitHub has been around for a long time. It's stable, and all of your developers know how to use it. Now, that being said, I would like to know how many people here have ever pulled code from GitHub. For example, the phrase here is git clone XXX. Whatever that code is, have you pulled a repo, a repository to your local hard drive? All right, we have one. Mohammed, yay! Shivaraj, actually two. We have 2, 3, 4. All right, we're moving along here. That's great. I'm going to say 5 for Raj. This is great. GitHub is a great resource. It's super powerful once you understand the basics. And the basics are simple. Git and push, or rather pull and push. And I'll give a quick demonstration, if that's all right. Mohammed, I'm going to give a demonstration using the terminal. Go ahead and I'll share my screen here. And let me pull open my terminal. Give me a moment, please. I use PowerShell. I'm currently on a Windows machine. I've been on Linux most of my adult life, but for the time being, I'm right now on a Windows machine. And let me see if I can share. Yes, here we go. All right, so now you should see my screen. Everyone sees it. I'll assume
Yes,
that is
we
a
can see
yes.
it. Yes.
Very good. All right, so With PowerShell, you have history. So if I go up, you'll see that I have recently, let me see if I can zoom in here. Yeah. I have recently pulled a repo called browser use script. Now, this script is an automation tool. If you're a business owner and you need to do a quick competition check on your competitors in your area, browser use script will allow you to write a simple text that will go onto the web and return results to you without using the browser itself. It will do it all as a terminal. So I've used it. It's great. I like this application, and it's super simple to use because all I had to do was type git clone and then this URL. And when I do this, actually, let me make sure. Let me just get into my directory. Make sure I don't break anything. CD documents. There we go. LS. You can see I've already downloaded this particular script. It's right here, browser use script, and I'm going to CD into it. CD browser use script, ls, and there is the entire application. So after I run git clone, let's clear this. Let's clear this so we can get a easier vision of what's going on here. And let me move this out of the way. There we go. Sorry, I'm just doing a little management. All right, so once this has been cloned, git clone into my local directory, you'll see, I can't get this out of the way. There we go. You'll see that I have an application called Python CLI.py. So when I run this, Python CLI.py, it's now going to ask me what I want to search for. And in this case, it gives me my task. My task is find flights from New York to London. Mohammed, give me an example of a good search.
Regarding flights or regarding anything?
Yeah, almost anything.
Good project for the challenge. Project
Okay.
ideas for the challenge.
Yeah, good projects for an AI. Let me move this out of my way so I can see it. For an AI hackathon challenge. Now, what's happening in the background is that browser use, which is a fabulous little library that leverages large language models like Anthropic or Gemini or OpenAI or Ollama, it goes out onto the web. Behind the web, it's using a headless server architecture, which means I don't need to see the browser. It goes out to the web and does the search for me without the browser, which is fabulous because then I can run this script 1,000 times a day and it doesn't affect my job. It's just doing its thing in the background. And in this case, what it's already brought back, and this is in seconds, it's already brought back a number of ideas. AI-driven climate modeling, wildlife monitoring systems, predictive analytics for natural disasters, smart agriculture solutions, autonomous waste sorting systems, AI-powered personal assistants, we've seen 1,000 times, real-time sports analytics. Now, all of these are ideas All right, these are ideas pulled from the web. So some other people have identified these as important. Now, this might be too heavy for you, too big for you. So what we can do is we'll do a simple one and we'll say, what is the task? The task is a simple AI project, simple project for a business that allows me and my colleagues to be more productive. And again, how can I do all of this so quickly? Because I use GitHub, I use other people's code to do work for me. That is one of the reasons why I use GitHub so often. I literally have probably 100 GitHub projects on running locally that I have identified as useful to my business purposes. And you, as a business owner or as an entrepreneur, you will find projects on GitHub, you clone them to your local drive, and then you can use them for free to solve your problems for free. Now, we have an enormous amount of information here. Goals. All right, so this is talking about how to set up your task in terms of being more productive with your team, giving advice, which AIs are terrific at. Really, AIs are very good at giving advice, ideas that you had not considered. So again, implement a clear goal, blah, 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 give ownership, systemize processes, smash information silos, meaning do not let a department control all of your data. I've seen this many times where the financial department does not share its data with sales until management steps in, because finance is in its own silo, information silo. Encourage time blocking. All of these things allow you as an entrepreneur to be more successful. Now, again, let's go back to the power of GitHub. I'm going to quickly go to GitHub right now. Is that okay with you, Mohammed?
I had one question. Like you mentioned,
Please.
just to summarize to everyone, this project that Dennis is using is not his project. Browser use script. Someone else has made it, right?
That is absolutely correct. Someone
And
else smarter than me wrote this code, and I'm
how?
using their brains to solve my problems.
Yeah, and my question again, like how, as a beginner, they will identify these type of projects to use. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Now this is where it gets fun and difficult at the same time, because there's so much noise in the AI space. I use Discord a lot for my current, to stay current in the technologies that I think, and I'm wrong, but I'm wrong sometimes and I'm right other times. So I use Discord to keep track of the projects that I find interesting. And currently, one of the projects that I've been following very closely is a project called Browser Use, BROWSER.USE. This is rooted in the idea of computer use, which came out of Claude AI / Anthropic. Claude developed computer use, which allows the computer to control your mouse. It will do all of your work for you. And the Claude computer use is very expensive because it requires so much data to be transmitted to the central server. which processes your request and then passes back that information. And those API requests get very expensive very quickly. So this particular application, browser use, can operate entirely locally using Olama, which I highly recommend you install, if for nothing else, to learn how to use large language models for free, because large language models are easily broken. They're very fragile. And once you understand where they are weak, then you can start to build on their strengths. Large language models can be very, very good at some things, and they're very bad at others. That's why the browser use guys developed an application that would allow a large language model to control your browser, in this case, Chrome. And it's already automating a lot of my competition checks for my company. I can write a small script. The script goes and tells computer or browser use what to do. And I walk away, I talk to my wife, I have a cup of coffee, I go and do my thing, and I come back and the results are there. And I didn't do anything except tell the machine what to do. I have a slave. This is what you need to think about. You can tell your computer to be your slave if you know how to control it. And GitHub is one of those tools that allows you to access some of those computer slaves. Browser use is a type of tool that I can tell to do, and I don't have to worry about it that much. I use them. Yes, I've used them from CLI before. Yes, command line interface is fabulous. I'm on it all the time. It's much easier. In fact, I've found that when creating applications using large language models, if you want to build an application, I found it to be much stabler if you start with just a command line interface. Once you get the tool working, then you can add the pretty pictures to it to make a user interface. But to work out the logic, to work out the functions, it's best, in my opinion, to start with a command line interface where you're actually entering text. You're actually choosing from a list of options, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click on number 3 to choose number 3, etc., etc. That's been my experience. And it's when you're dealing with creating an application as a proof of concept, you have to keep your costs low. And if you start using Anthropic or Gemini 2, DeepSeek is cheap, but it's not very good. OpenAI 4.0, these API calls get very expensive very quickly if you're not paying attention. And a user interface with lots of pictures and buttons and drop downs is very expensive because it has to read a lot more code to figure out what problem it needs to fix. If you're trying to debug a GUI application, it's very difficult. Debugging a command line application, not as difficult. And you'll see this when you look at GitHub, how many applications are fundamentally command line versus GUI. My experience is that there are a lot more GitHub applications that use just a little bit of GUI and a lot of command line. That's my experience. I welcome arguments either way. So please, questions from anybody out there about what it is I'm talking about.
Yes, please. I request people to ask their question. There is one question from LinkedIn. You mind if I read it?
Please.
So Muhammad Ahmed is asking how to make a good repo so that people look at it and discover it, how to make a good repo, especially in GitHub, the projects that are there.
Oh, okay, that's a great question. I use an application, my chosen IDE. My chosen IDE is Cursor. Now, Cursor is one of many. Cursor is built on VS Code, which I've used for years. VS Code is cool, but Cursor has some tools that intrinsically use large language models. So VS Code, Cursor, you could also use GitHub Code Spaces, which is very good, a little more expensive. To answer the question about how to make your repo more attractive, your code has to work. Full stop. Your code has to work when people start it. If it doesn't work when it starts, people are going to just not use it again. The code also needs to solve a very real world problem. Browser use, in this case, solved the problem of how to automate web searches, how to automate filling out forms. Browser use, as an example, I'm not connected to those guys. They're great guys. They answer my questions, but they're one of many other projects that I follow. But browser use solves a very real problem. How do you automate filling out forms? How do you automate sending out requests for information? How do you automate your own competition checks? How do you automate searching for flights for a particular destination? Browser use offers that. They solve a real world problem. So how do you get a lot of likes on your GitHub repo? Make your code useful to the world. Other part is make sure it works when it starts. Second is make sure the documentation, at least the README and the requirements documentation, is clear. That helps a lot, especially for somebody like me. I look at the repo. If I don't see a lot of documentations, but it sounds like it might fix the problem, I'll go ahead and give it a try. I'll download it, I'll clone it locally and see if it does what it's supposed to do. And if it does, I'm happy. But then I might post my own PR, my own pull request to supply more documentation, and often post a bug or a user request to that repo. For example, browser use script has a very specific problem. I'm in contact with the developers. They think they know where the problem comes from. I'm going to get a fix. Everybody's happy. I've made the world a better place, which with open source and GitHub, you as a small person in the great 7.4 billion people on the planet, you can make the world a little bit better by telling developers, the code kind of works, but it doesn't work here. That gives the developers something to fix. And developers like that in some ways. So to answer the question, how do you make your GitHub repo attractive? Make sure the code works. Make sure the code solves a real world problem. Make sure there's at least some documentation to make sure that the code will actually run on your machine. Every developer in the world has had this problem. It works on my machine, but and the other guy says, well, it doesn't work on mine. If it doesn't work on mine, I don't care about you. That's the full stop. That's all it is when it comes down to it. If your code doesn't work on someone else's machine, it doesn't work at all. So,
Yes.
any other questions?
Yeah, Omar has raising his hands. I will give him that. So this is the same thing that happened in our last challenge. There were some good repos, but we could not replicate the code to test it out. And that was something that does not happen. So that is the reason you need to mention. Maybe this is a tip, maybe something related to GitHub or not, but you need to mention your version of your models, the packages that you're using. This is very important because if there is an update of a package, some of your code may not work. So make sure that your environment, your package version that you're using is something you need to document, because this is a big learning. where people just put OpenAI. Yeah. And you need to put the version as well because LangChain has changed a couple of times. OpenAI has changed a couple of times. So some components don't work there. So if you have to mention the versions that are there. So these are some tips that we can just give while we are just talking on this quick platform. Now I'll request Omar to ask this question. He was raising his hand for a couple of minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Was good, everyone. Dennis, it was great meeting you again on the virtual screen at least. I wanted to ask you a personal question. So you mentioned, I think Mohammed mentioned earlier about creating like 70 repos in a single month. Like to be honest, I've made like 20 repos so far. Was it 20 or? So yeah, so you've made like
No,
lots and lots.
I have not. I have created, and I can grab my repo list here. I have not created 70 repos in the last month. That is absolutely not true, but I have created quite a few. And let me just pull open my repository list here. And here we go.
Yeah, I think I was talking about the projects, the small project that he has done in the last
Yeah.
6 months and not exactly converted. So that's the difference between you don't need to put everything on GitHub. If you have some good project like what Dennis was mentioning that you want to share or you want to, you can go ahead, Dennis. He was asking you the question. So what was your question, Omar? Your question?
I think my question was from a personal perspective, what is that mentality like? Just putting a lot of like projects and just putting on GitHub repo and what's that mindset like? Because you know, it's like that consistency can be a challenge for some folks, especially if they're working or they got universities or they got other responsibilities. So I'm just curious from that mindset perspective, more so of a personal thing than anything.
Omar, this is a fabulous question. I'm either really lucky or I'm really tortured because I have the time and I have the drive to write these applications to solve my problems, my business problems. And some of the code, or actually, there's quite a few projects on my local machine that I do not share because it's effectively it's intellectual property for my company. But for things that I can easily generalize out into the bigger world, then I post them. But if you look at my repo, you'll see my most recent one is an AI solution assistant. I had a great time building that because it actually forced me to think about, again, how to solve problems. The other repo, which is this one, the Dubai Data Science Hackathon. Whenever I see a Word document now, especially in the shape of a form, I was like, how, why? That's so la. So I built an application. I built a script so I don't have to fill out those kinds of forms. I hate that stuff because I already have that data. I wrote a Python script that stripped out all the unnecessary stuff, prompted me for everything I needed, generated a JSON, and boom, now I have a JSON file that I can apply to almost any forms I see on the web and automatically apply it without me typing anything. That's where browser use comes in. Again, I'm not affiliated with those guys, but their code is really cool and it makes my life easier. The other project, I'm currently in the middle of a renovation, so I wanted to track all of the stuff that's going on in my renovation. I started off with the data I needed, and everybody who's sitting here, Samar, Vaibhav, Prabha, Misty, Syed, Barry, Munib, Krutika. Everyone, start with your data first. What do you need? What reports do you need? What kind of output is proof that your problem has been solved? And in the case in point, my Python apartment renovation, which is what it stands for, I'm tracking my costs, I'm tracking my suppliers, I'm tracking the priorities, and I'm tracking it all through JSON, which tells me what I need to know. And because it's all in JSON, I can pass that into Claude or Copilot or OpenAI or Anthropic and say, write an email to such and such supplier requesting information about X, Y, or Z. Boom! All of that JSON gets crunched. I get a new email for that supplier based on the data they need. My job went from 20 minutes email to 30 seconds. That's what large language models can do if you think about the final product that you need. So that's how I that's how I keep my business running, and my problems I try to compartmentalize into small pieces of code. Most of my code now is about 600 to 1,000 lines of code, which is not a lot, but that's where the large language models start tipping out. The token counts start tipping out. Anthropic supports 80,000 input tokens at this point. And you get working code for about anywhere from 500 to 600 lines with Anthropic. And Claude Anthropic is by far still the #1 out there. DeepSeek is good, but it's buggy and it generates some weird stuff. It hallucinates a lot more than Anthropic. OpenAI is good, but it's not as good as Claude. Gemini is good, but it's not as good as Claude. But all that's going to change in another 3 months. It's going to be another large language model that writes better code. And I'm totally okay with that because I keep track of all of my API keys in a JSON file. So when I need to switch over to another API, done.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I wanted to ask one question regarding the challenge. So what is your project idea for this challenge? Like, what are you trying to build in this, for this specific, if you can just talk a little bit about it?
I'm going to stick with my original idea, which was a tool to help humans use large language models to be more effective. As humans, we're really not very good at a lot of stuff. Most of us, in fact, I'm guessing 99% of the people on this call are no good at writing code. There are very, very, very few people that are any good at writing code, and I've met them, and they are very weird people. People who know how to write good code are strange because they don't think like I do. So I want to use the large language models and the coding tools to help me be a better problem solver, because my emotions get in the way of my ability to analyze a particular problem. I'm not able to think of the options that I might have when given a problem. So I would like to use the large language models for what they're good at right now, which is giving advice, giving options, being a memory assistant. Because Misty, you know your mother or your father gave you good advice, but you forgot it. But maybe the large language model will help you remember. Samar, I'm sure that somewhere someone told you good advice. Well, you need that advice now, but you forgot it. So a large language model will help you remember, will help you surface that information that you already knew, because you could only remember so much. Large language models, for example, Olama, can remember the current version, Llama 3.2, which I have running on my machine, has 2.2 billion data points. Woohoo! That's nothing, right? You know, you have OpenAI 3.0 or 4.0, sorry, which theoretically has 100 billion data points. Are you going to access all of them? No. Are you going to remember any of them? No. So I'm going to use these large language models as memory aids to help me solve my problems and maybe some of your problems in a more effective way. And that being said, if you don't know how to use GitHub, download Olama and type in GitHub clone help, and Olama will tell you for free how to use GitHub. I use Cursor. I type into Cursor, I say, okay, upload this repo to GitHub. Cursor does the whole thing for me. I don't even have to remember the codes anymore. That's where we are. I don't have to remember. The large language models remember for me. And that's where all of us need to think about. It's a memory addition. Use it as a memory aid, and your productivity will increase. Full stop.
Yeah, this is now regarding few comments you had and regarding the challenge. Just wanted to, so as you mentioned, right, humans, we are dealing with a lot of people who are learning. Humans have become lazy, or they don't have a direction. So we, in the last challenge, in the last 3 challenges, we did not have anything. We just had to submit your idea. People used to submit a link. People used to write one-liners. And that is the reason why I try to give a structure. So the thing is, it's a guide. Like you can use the guide for thinking, you can use the guide for writing writing the steps. But at least when you have an idea, you need to think a little bit more, not just I want to create a news bot or whatever I want to do. So that was the purpose of giving that template, because in the last challenges I got a lot of one-liners that are there. So the purpose of this, because all of us are here, we know, as Dennis is telling, we know a lot of things, and very well said. Then Dennis, we all know what are the good things to do, how to write a good, how to do something good, right? How, you need to spend time in it, and you need to have a structure in it. And this challenge and these type of directions is giving you some help that is there. So that is the reason why I created this form. And GitHub is something that I have requested people in the third day to make a repo about it. Like there are a lot of people. If I can just share my screen, Dennis, if you don't mind, or you are muted. Yeah, so this is the reason why, and just to keep things on structure, I know this form is very unconventional, but I am running an academy where I am also talking to a lot of people who don't have a direction, who don't know about how to do project ideas, who don't know what all need to write. That is the reason this is like a guiding material. And this time I'm requesting people to at least follow this for the first day. And after that, you want to follow it, not follow it, it is up to you. That is there. And regarding one stats that I wanted to show you as well. So we, in our community, we have we had around 51 people who have participated in the challenge, and I was just doing a data. So in the challenge, there are submissions. So you feel that the submission, the are just we use it for a lot of analysis that are there. In this particular last time, there were a lot of people who were doing the no code, low code path. This time I see, and I'm very proud of the community, that you have 22 people have taken the LLM path, the coding path, and 13 people have not specified the path. They have just left it blank, but mostly they are doing something in the mix, right? MLDS path is something that I personally push as a data scientist, but it is going away. Last time there were 5 submissions, this time only 2. So maybe in the next time when I do a challenge, I may remove it completely, because no one is doing project, which is a sad part. but as I need to push people to do a little bit more of ML projects also. It can be a computer vision project or any other project that uses traditional AI as well. But this is something that looks well. So every quarter we are trying to do challenges, repeating the same thing where people, and I was just telling Dennis as well, people know what to do. There are thousands of content, there are thousands of videos online, but I am trying to put a structure around this. You may learn from each other, use the feed. So in our this thing, people who are open to sharing their uh, comments, sharing their learnings, this is something you will learn from each other. So some people are just writing a very few lines, but some people who are giving, like Shivraj is giving his perspective, and he's learning from these things, and this encourages people to know what others are doing. So right now there are 51 people. Out of that, you saw the distribution. You will learn a lot. There are people who are using Power Platform. There are people who are using any other no code, low code tool as well. They're sharing their experiences as well. And this is a very good ground as well for people to stay motivated, see what others are doing, and finish it in 8 days. At least try to finish whatever you have. By next Sunday 11:45 is the last day of submission. Many of the participants in the last, I was just talking to Dennis as well, they do everything in the last minute. So if I go to manage, you will see the checkouts that are there. They You will see in the last, people will do late, and they will complete things in the 8th day, and that is fine. We only, as I was just telling, the end result is the project. If you do it daily, it is better outcome. If you do it in the last moment, the outcome may not be that great. That is up to humans how they do it. So Munib was raising. Yes, you have unmuted. You have to raise your hands. That is there. Then let me answer. Dennis, you wanted to add something. Where are you? I cannot see you. Let me stop my screen. I think I cannot see Dennis. Yes. Dennis, before, yeah, ask to unmute. And Munib, just raise your hand so that I can give you as well. I asked to unmute. Yes. And can you on your camera, Munib, if possible, to ask a question, just on your camera and raise your hand. Yeah, Dennis. So what is your thought about this format and my learnings? Because
I think what you are experiencing is a common managerial problem. If there are not regular check-ins, then staff will put the project off until the last minute. That's maybe a generalized evaluation, but that's also coming from from what you're expressing or showing here, is that people will put off their project until it has to be done. But let's pass it over to Munib. Munib, what was your question?
yeah, I've asked to unmute Munib. If you can, yeah, go ahead, Munib.
Yeah, thank you, Arshad. Thank you, Dennis. Just consider me a beginner. So obviously wonderful hearing what Dennis had to state. I've hit actually a roadblock because I've been using a no-code route. I was actually looking at Bolt.new earlier, plus maybe even experimenting with Replit. Both are actually not working for me, and obviously I've raised some cases with the respective vendors. Are there any other tools which you suggest? I'm trying to build an app which should collect different questions and being able to provide a cybersecurity risk posture to the businesses towards what are the critical aspects that they're missing, mapping to different cybersecurity frameworks, be it GDPR, be it CIS or ISO standards and all. Do you have any advice for me? Because the chatbot is not the way for building such apps, because that was there among the suggestions, but I need to build something as an app or as a web app, which should have the questionnaire, should be able to provide dashboards, and eventually there's a report identifying what are the critical risks pertaining to the organizations which they need to prioritize.
Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Munib, I think what you're trying to do is great. There's a huge need for more cybersecurity, especially because the script kiddies, I don't know if you know this phrase, script kiddies.
Yeah, indeed.
The script kiddies are using large language models to build better penetration test scripts that will tear apart networks much faster. On the other side, you have the people who are using the same large language models to build scripts to prevent these script kiddies from attacking their networks. And it's a battle. So your idea is really useful. That being said, it's huge, Munib, huge, and very difficult to put into a chatbot because the amount of data that you're looking at is enormous. So from an administrative perspective, you might think about what kinds of reports you want to generate out of these interactions with this chatbot, because your chatbot needs to have an enormous amount of data. You, sir, are probably looking at building your own model. You go to Hugging Face, you download a generic model, and then you pump it full of your data. That is commitment. That is a commitment. But it also means that you need to be really knowledgeable, or at least have a database of these interactions with cybersecurity. And that's a huge, huge field, because everywhere is cybersec. Everywhere there's a network connection, there is cybersecurity. And so your domain is enormous. So your chatbot, unfortunately, is going to probably fail until you have built your own model using, again, Hugging Face or something similar. You might be able to get something out of AWS Q3 with their guardrails, but that's questionable and, again, expensive. So I would say, hey, it's a great idea, but you might want to narrow it down to a specific subset of cybersecurity, because any chatbot you build, anybody who's smart about cybersec will break your chatbot pretty quickly, just in terms of testing its outer limits of knowledge. That
So
would
Dennis,
be my.
no, I definitely heard you. So just to clarify, I don't want a chatbot. I want actually an app, and obviously it's a phased project. So the phase one supposed to have basically 30 questions answered by a business. And this is where from those answers, we want to be able to generate a report of what are their risks, what are their findings, which is sort of a self-assessment at this particular stage. So it is narrowed down to very small or minuscule project for now. And this is where I wanted suggestions towards how do I fill in these questionnaires that I can provide to businesses.
Oh,
So
okay.
not a boring form.
Great. That's easy.
Okay.
Build, I don't know which large language model you're using. I use Claude Anthropic, and I'm a big believer in JSON as just a beginning. Don't worry about your APIs yet. Don't worry about your databases. Just get a good, solid JSON repository that you can work with to test all of your cases, where you can basically pass your 30 questions as a JSON file to a large language model and say, fill out this data as fill it out with sample responses. It will return to you a filled out JSON file that you can then pass to another large language model, whichever one you want, and say, analyze this JSON file for its cybersecurity threat analysis, whatever you want to call it. Boom, you've got a quick POC that will cost relatively little money to get started. That's how I would start it.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think yes, this we will try to now. We can take it offline. Munib, just we try to help you out here. And now coming to yeah. Any final thoughts before we end the call for today? There are few suggestions, so let me just summarize this. Maybe Munib he's not a coder, so he's taken the no code, low code path. So the tools that are there is Bolt, there are tools like Syed has put Lovable. So try to explore these tools. I have given 10 to 11 no code, low code tools that I had explored for basic things. So this is not the whole universe, as I've mentioned, because there are so many low code, no code tools. Yasir is telling flow wise. So something that can fit your use case that is there, even if it is a simple use case. Dennis is talking more about the coding path, maybe which you are not ready now, but later on you will be ready. So before we conclude the session, Dennis, do you have any last message to the community members who have joined the challenge? Many of them have not joined the challenge here, I see in the call, but uh, any message that you have and anything that you have on GitHub. And one more message is for the no code, low code people who are not doing any coding. Still, I'm telling them this is my message. Maybe you can echo it. At least put something on GitHub. Put your document, upload your any document that you have, upload the photos of that tool, upload image of the tool, write a good readme. At least do that for now. Maybe in the next challenge you will do it in do it in code. Many people that I know here who have joined the challenge last time when they were participating in the low code option, and this time they have evolved to the coding option. So as this is a step by step process, so but GitHub is something that I'm personally pushing people to use it and do it as well. So yeah, over to you, Dennis. Last thoughts, and let me share your LinkedIn as well on the chat. So if anyone wants to connect with you, they can connect with you as well.
Thank you, Mohammed. My last thoughts are, it's a very fast moving world. The no code, low code has literally changed before my very eyes in the last 3 months. And I've been following this. I've been following the AI, so-called AI generation for 6 years now. I was one of the first people. I was one of the first people in my circle to use BERT, which was one of the very first transformers available. What I'm trying to say is, it's moving fast. It keeps moving. It's very difficult to keep up, but understanding the principles will make it much easier to follow along. Understanding how to use GitHub to pull these code tools and use them locally will make you as a problem solver much more effective going forward. And if you're still looking for a project on what to do, find a problem that you need to solve in your world. Start with that. Then you will begin to understand how difficult it is to use a computer to solve a problem. That's probably the biggest lesson. Computers cannot solve all your problems until you start to think about how computers think. And with that, I pass it over to Mohammed.
Yes, end the call. Yeah, I will just show to everyone on the screen because I don't use, my background is a data scientist. I'm a coder. So I do everything on code. But the community and especially the UE market, people are a little bit away from code. They feel coding is only for the coders. And this is changing slightly. But just because I'm in academy right now, my full time, we are doing a lot of academy things, and that's the reason why I put everything that is there in no code. Some of the things that he mentioned, Yasir mentioned as well. Dennis has mentioned few words. I will be doing some workshops in the future on it, but that is not my core work. My core work is doing research in agents, fine tuning and all that. But for these community initiatives, and I also request people like Dennis or anyone else who wants to give a workshop. Last time I asked Barry to give a recording on his tool that he used, Krish to give recording of the tool that he used. But I have around 13 tools that I have done here, and you can get an idea from here. It may help your use case, it may not help your use case. That you need to figure out by seeing the video and seeing, testing it out. There is no one fit solution that is there. As Sayed mentioned, there are few alternatives like Lovable, or there are many that I hear in our community also. If you see, there are a lot of people using a lot of no code, low code tools available at every day. Something or the other is coming out, but I have just done the top trending things that were there on my mind. I had put a recording of that and put it on the platform just to use as a reference. And that is not the only thing that is available. If you feel something is more relevant to you, you can use that and share it as well as a recording so that I can upload it for the future batches to prepare themselves for the challenge. So thank you again, and thanks a lot, Dennis, for all your time. And I have unmuted you to tell a bye to everyone. And if I did not answer anyone's question, please put it on the WhatsApp. We will try to help you guys in whatever capacity it is. And good night. Thanks a lot, Dennis, again for all your time. Take
Thank you,
care.
Mohammed, for the invite. Last words, everybody, you can do it. I'm not smart, really. If I can do it, you can do it. Just takes a little bit of effort. You'll figure it out. There's lots of resources, large language models, Gemini, GitHub, Copilot, Anthropic. They're all there to help you. Just ask the questions. The answers are out there.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.